everybody. You're listening to and possibly watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz,
I'm Steve Morey.
And I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
and we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or as I said, stream in. And as you can tell from attire here and the opening graphic, we're here to talk about Superman.
Bum, ba-da-bum.
Oh. Now, we
Ah.
didn't have a show on Thursday because there were some members of our cast here who would not have gotten to the movie in time. And we can all talk about how many times we've seen the movie so far and all that. And I'm sure even if you haven't seen it more than once, that there are future plans. But yeah. So again, we're talking about Superman, which is a 2025 film directed by James Gunn, who also wrote it. It's the first film in the new DC Universe series of films. And the film stars David Cornsweet as Clark Kent and Superman, alongside Rachel Brosnahan as Lois Lane, Nicholas Hoult as Lex Luthor, and a bunch of other characters and a bunch of other actors. And I just want to get rid of the formalities and just get to it because I've been chomping at the bit for 5 days to talk about this movie. So,
Because you saw, I'm sure you'll get into this, but you saw a special screening of it, didn't you?
yes, I did. I saw a screening for Amazon Prime members on last Tuesday night, and then and that was in IMAX, and then I saw it in the local theater, which is a smaller chain called Picture Show, which has their own branded enhanced screening experience called UVX, which incorporates like Dolby Atmos and 4K projection and things like that. So I came this close, let me do this, like this close to seeing it a third time this morning, but because of a certain anniversary and some other things, it made a little more sense to just give it a few more days, Yeah. So, and I knew that we had this show, so I'm getting my Superman fill today. So.
Oh yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, we weren't kidding. Where we really haven't, with each other, we haven't really talked a lot about our feelings of this movie yet to each other. So, just because we wanted to save it all for tonight, make sure that one, we weren't spoiling it for anybody who hadn't seen it yet. In our conversations, and also just kind of possibly shock each other with our hot takes.
There may be some shocks. I don't know if they're shocks, but there may be some surprises. Let's put it that way.
Maybe, yeah, maybe.
Also, have to say before you go any further that if you're worried about spoilers, you may want to watch another show because I have to say this. I have so much respect for other podcasts that have Movie Bears immediately comes to mind of being able to talk about the movie at the beginning point without spoilers and then get into it later. And there's some other shows. Who's excellent at this, Steve? Karina Longworth.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Talking about a movie without spoiling any details, yet still you walk away with the importance, and I would point people specifically to the erotic 80s episodes of
you must remember this.
Yeah, she's excellent at that. Yeah.
We are not. We are.
We'll just blow it. And also, if you're joining us for the first time, and hopefully we are getting some new people because this is a high-profile film, Superman here. That when we do an episode that's movie-based, we also provide recommendations from our vast knowledge of comic books, and we'll point you towards either graphic novels or collected editions that feature characters from the movie. That we think you would enjoy and maybe interested in sampling. So that's what we're gonna do. All right, Steve, you're our plot guy, so the show baton is headed over to you. So
Awesome.
Why don't you start us off?
So I made some little notes here, so I don't spoil too much of the plot right away. I mean, we are going to be spoiling a lot of stuff, so just be forewarned. But the basic plot for this is It picks up 3 years after Superman has revealed himself to the world. So he's been fighting the good fight, saving people, fighting arch villains and space aliens and everything for the past 3 years. And this is a world that has no metahumans have existed for over 300 years. So it's not a huge shock for them. They're used to superheroes. They're used to supervillains. They're used to giant plots to enslave or destroy all of humanity, left, right, and center. Because hey, this is the world of DC Comics. This is the world of the new DCU. Um, Superman, at the beginning of this movie, has involved himself in a conflict between two countries, Baravia and I'm going to get the wrong here, but Jarhanpur, where Baravia was invaded Jarhanpur. Superman stopped the invasion, had a little bit of a talk with the president of Arabia, and saved the day, stop the war from happening. Unfortunately, this has created some conflict internationally because he is seen to have acted in the interest of the United States, or in some capacity, some political capacity. And there's a lot of chatter on the internet, a lot of chatter around news floors, and some personal opinions there that are kind of questioning Superman's motives. Um, this Superman, of course, works at the Daily Planet, and has a wonderful relationship with the entire newsroom there, especially with, of course, Lois Lane. So this Clark Kent and Lois Lane are an early item. They're just dating, and they get to show their relationship there as well. Um, so because of his involvement in this conflict, the Hammer of Moravia shows up to fight Superman. And it is apparent that Lex Luthor is also involved in this scheme. And Lex Luthor, along with his associates, the Engineer and the mysterious Ultraman, also have some other ulterior motives to find a way to discredit, of course, Superman and take him off the board. And through a lot of machinations there, that does happen, and it's up to Lois Lane and the Justice Gang, including Mister Terrific, the Guy Gardner Green Lantern, and Hawkgirl, to come together and try to save the day. Try to bring Superman back, so that he can defeat Lex once and for all. And of course, there's lots of great surprises, some great cameos, and some great characters. We have very good boy Crypto. We have the Superman robots of the Fortress of Solitude, and of course, Ma and Pa Kent as well as some other characters too, Metamorpho, the Changing Man, and some other interesting little Easter eggs and appearances. So let's just say this is probably one of the brighter and more fun Superman movies. The stakes are relatively high, but I think we'll be talking about exactly what kind of changes or what kind of differences this might have compared to some of the other more recent Superman films, from the past 10 years, 10, 15 years or so, from the previous DC attempts. So I think we're all set to talk about it. I tried to be very non-spoilery in that summary. So we could go ahead, we can crack the doors wide open and talk about this and see where we go. So Bill, I mean, you saw it first and you've seen it the most so far. So what do you think? What did you think about this movie?
As I told somebody, more than the Superman film that I wanted, I think this is the movie that America needs right now.
Yeah.
And I wholeheartedly believe that if that's like bombastic, sorry, I in my heart of hearts I really feel that way, because what we saw was a film, and Caleb has it in his thing about kindness is punk rock, which is key to the film. Kindness should win.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a very important message to put across right now. And I know that there's been like those ridiculous stories of like people, with like, oh, Superman's woke, and we can talk about that. But I think people that go in with that perception will come out hopefully thinking, "Holy shit, I'm back in the bad guys." I doubt it. I really doubt it.
Yeah.
I think they're so polluted right now there's a very slim chance of that happening. But this is something I've always said is like, people always talk about Superman being a Boy Scout.
Mhm.
To me, he's more like a firefighter. He doesn't care. He's
Yeah.
he's not like a cop. He's not like a scout. He's like a firefighter that's just there to do the job. And we're just very lucky that he happens to be one of the best people in the universe, morally.
Yeah.
So that's my initial feelings, is that I just came out of there like I basically have had a smile on my face for 5 days now, and I haven't had a lot to smile about, and I think a
Mhm.
lot of people, especially those that are, yeah, I don't even want to restrict it to the United States given the chaos that's happening. Um, I don't think we've really had a cause to smile too much,
Hmm.
and I'm just
Or
so
at least,
happy that this delivered where it needed to deliver. It
yeah.
really did. The biggest complaint that I had with Man of Steel, which was the previous solo Superman film, the last previous solo Superman film, and there were elements of it that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That principally, though I don't think Amy Adams was the best Lois Lane, the fact that she's such a good reporter, she figured out who he is. Like, that's chef's kiss. There's some really good points in Man of Steel, but it's also a joyless film.
Yeah.
There's very little sense of joy in the film, and when you have a character that's primary colored and steeped in optimism, it's a missed opportunity. However you look at that.
Right.
So, um, I'll get into more specifics as we talk about the film, but um, it was a remarkably well cast film. The chemistry is off the charts,
Mhm.
not just Superman and Lois. I mean, I just think across the board, uh, he made the very, very perceptive choices when it came to casting, and I just have praise for it. There's some little nitpicky things that I'm sure we can get into if there's parts that you didn't like. If all I'll say is if you're a fan of the Daily Planet, um, I have a feeling there's probably a decent amount that ended up on the cutting room floor that
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
might enjoy more. But just in terms of a well balanced film that Warner's and DC needed at this point, they got it.
Yeah.
They absolutely got it.
Right.
And like I said, I do feel that there's the potential of this being more important than that in our
Yeah.
zeitgeist.
I mean, box office wise, as of now, it's um, it's one of the top grossing films of the year, or at least top grossing premieres of the year. It's the number 3 highest grossing premiere weekend
Hmm.
film, behind, I think it's like,
Minecraft
uh,
and Lilo and Stitch.
yeah, Minecraft and Lilo and Stitch, which are the 2 children's films. And this film, I think, might benefit from that as well, because this is a Superman that you're probably not going to be too worried about taking. I don't want to say little kids, but like younger viewers
Yeah.
too, because one, we could talk about language all day. Oh my gosh! Oh gee whiz! I mean, this is a Superman who probably has never said a 4-letter word in his life. This is definitely a portrayal of a Superman who is a very hopeful, a very positive, a very joyful. I know you said that multiple times, joyful.
Yeah.
But this is like boy next door
But even
Superman.
saying the joyfulness, that doesn't mean the stakes aren't high.
Oh, exactly.
That
Yeah,
does
and
not
we'll
mean
get
the
we'll get
stakes
to
are not
that.
high. Yeah.
We'll
So
get to that.
I did want to
Yeah,
throw in there. So you're right about Superman and the language that he uses being very
yeah,
PC. Just for folks who maybe have not seen it and do have kids, the folks around Superman, that does not apply to, right?
Exactly. That is not. Yeah.
They're willing to say, "God damn," there's shits being thrown around a lot of places. So the people around Superman are not so guarded in their language. So there is some foul language in here, and actually, that is one criticism I've heard from not just weird people in chat rooms or whatever, but from folks I know. Who's like, yeah, no, I would love to take my daughter there, and I could go take my daughter to watch this part of it. But I mean, there are other parts I'm not going to. But still, for the most part, I don't think it was over the top, and it was not done so gratuitously. I don't feel like.
Well, and I think also it's a good contrast. So this is where the character of Superman, I think, is extremely important here, because this is a character who is an extremely positive role model. I mean, fictional character, of course, but it's a positive role model. And, his optimism, the fact that he is always looking for, an opportunity to help someone or something rather than destroy it. I mean, his first instinct is to, there's a part where there's a giant kaiju who's just destroying everything. And his first instinct is to, can we knock it out so we can take it someplace safe? Can we take it to an off-planet zoo, or like a place where it can be studied or whatever, like safely? And even with Lex Luthor, he has every opportunity to physically destroy him,
sure,
multiple times, and he does not. And in fact, the cruelty exhibited, and this is maybe the biggest criticism that I've heard. My husband said this to me immediately after leaving. But this Lex Luthor is a very bad man. I mean, Nicholas Hoult did an excellent job making Lex look like a calculating monster of a human being. There are some things that he does in this where you're just sort of like, he's got to be. I mean, there's just no empathy. There is no humanity with this person whatsoever, and I think he did it great. And here he is confronted with an alien. An illegal alien immigrant who's come to the planet Earth, who shows more humanity than Lex, who champions himself as the prime example of top humanity right there. So I think I think for the way that this Superman is presented, probably the most family-friendly Superman, on the big screen. Since I like Brendan Routh, I enjoyed Superman Returns. But I think, we're going back to Christopher Reeve in terms of, just the very positive image that is being portrayed on the big screen. I mean, on the small screen, we've had Smallville, we've had the Arrowverse versions of Superman, of course, all the cartoon versions of Superman. So there's been plenty. But I think, Corn Sweat does just a really good job of portraying a very positive, very optimistic role model of a Superman. But everybody else is great in it too. And I'm going to jump in and talk about Crypto being a wonderful addition to this movie, because he's funny, he's goofy, everybody loves dogs, but also Crypto acts very much like a real dog. Does not give a crap about what everybody else wants him to do or what he should be doing, but he's still a good boy. He's still a very good boy. But just multiple little things, doesn't listen, misbehaves, does all sorts of ridiculous things, and is very much a dog who can fly and is super strength. It's fun. And I think there was a cut scene, you can probably see it in some of the toy collections, where Superman and Crypto apparently had maybe a fight with an abominable snowman or something. You've got that right behind you, Bill. That would have been very interesting. I see that the toy version of the snowman, the arms come off, so maybe that played into that a little bit with Crypto. But also gave us a wonderful moment at the end of the movie, two wonderful moments at the end of the movie with Crypto that I thought just played perfectly well with the rest of the feel of this film. So anyway, Caleb, what do you have to say about it?
So I thought, to kind of echo Bill, I think that the movie struck the right tone for the time that we're living in. As as far as like it's the earnestness of the film that I think that really sneaks through. I mean, doesn't sneak through. It's about as subtle as a sledgehammer, right? It's an earnest movie. And it's, I think the magic's, Bill, like you said earlier, people will talk about Superman and they'll call him the Boy Scout and stuff, and he is. And I think that plays into what we hear from a lot of folks. They'll say, Superman's boring, right?
That's their reason why they don't like him.
Right. Yeah. So because he is that, like he's boring, right? He's not really controversial, and he's an all powerful person with something for every situation, and there's really no high stakes. And I think that's honestly, I'll put myself in those shoes, because I think I was one of those people who thought that for a long time. And as we'll talk about later on in the show, at some point I read a book and I understand the character of Superman for the first time, really. And that's what that is. And the thing you have to understand about it, yeah, he is those things. He's near invulnerable, right? But every single person around him is incredibly fragile. And he moves heaven and earth to protect those people. And that's where the stakes are. And those people are incredibly important to not only his life, but to the storyline, right? They're not bystanders who are in the way. They're people that he needs. They're people that he feeds off of. They're people that he would be less if they weren't in his life. And he has to ensure that those people are protected. And even the compassion that he shows towards the people that he is actively fighting, as Steve was saying, the I'm not going to kill you, right? And I don't want that. I will find another way. It's that earnestness that comes in, even when the people around him that he considers friends, allies, good people, don't share those values. I mean, there's people who will drop bodies for the betterment of that situation, but that's not his go-to. And I think the juxtaposition of those things, when you truly understand that this is a character who, yes, is the embodiment of good, right? Is the embodiment of compassion and power, or power through compassion, then you can really start to understand that the stakes and the magic is in the relationships with the people around him. And I think that's what makes this beautiful, right? It is his relationship with Lois. It is his relationship with Jimmy, and you get to see the staff of the planet. It's the relationship he has with all of these other superheroes that he really gets into and mixes it up with, and how he handles those situations, and how his spirit, even though it's different from what those other people, it makes them better, right? It makes them seek something else out. It is aspirational, which is what Superman was always intended to be. And I put up, after I watched it, I went home and was kind of talking about it. And I think where I landed on it is Man of Steel. So a lot of people think of Superman as, like you said, primary colors, bright, shining, and even if it's best, it's aspirational and inspirational. But I think a lot of people also make the mistake of it is those things in a separate box and protected from the cynicism of real life. And it's not. The good stories are not protected from that cynicism. They're not isolated from that cynicism. This movie is not protected or isolated from that cynicism. It is earnest and bright and energetic and compassionate and forward-thinking, in spite of the fact that the audience is going to bring that cynicism to the movie. And it makes you feel like that's okay. It lets you kind of take that heaviness off for a little bit. And I think that's what this movie did really well, in a very comedic way, action-packed way, and comic book way.
But even when it did take serious turns, because saying the dynamic that you're talking about was in full force in the Lois interview scene.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Where that was a wonderful mechanism to ground it in reality in some capacity.
Yeah. It shows how Superman, like the character of Superman, is also a bit naive. That he believes in the best when the best is not the case. Like when what he's trying to do creates more complications and creates more problems, because he's basically putting himself. There's a bit of hubris in there, and that's something that he may not understand all automatically, because he just wants to do the best. He wants to do good, and sometimes doing good creates more problems because of the cynical nature of the world, because of how other people approach problems and approach situations. And that's, I think, that's really on display here when you look at how he does things compared to what the Justice Gang, how they do things. Mr. Terrific, he's very problem-solving oriented, but he's pragmatic. Everything that he does is pragmatic, whether it's, somebody, it's easiest and best to just destroy this thing and move on. Guy Gardner's just a hothead who does dirty work, and he is the first to admit it. It's like you got something nobody else feels comfortable doing, I'll do it for you. And Hawkgirl, I mean, who knows? That there is a criticism there, I think, a little bit with Hawkgirl.
Same.
But even the villains in this, these are not villains who are dumbed down. This is not the Gene Hackman Lex Luthor. This is not a Lex Luthor who is, I got some fun scheme, and it'll make me rich, but I'm calculating, but I'm not evil. This Lex Luthor is evil.
And I absolutely adore the Gene Hackman Lex Luthor. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that character being a comedic anchor.
No.
It's just there's other ways to go about it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Absolutely.
I think especially with a situation like this where it's going to be a shared universe between film and video games and TV programs and animated concerns, that to put that version of Lex Luthor forward as your initial exposure, I don't think was right.
Interesting.
Where we have here, yeah.
Interesting.
I think that when you do get to the situations, which it's just the way we operate now with shared universes. We're, as comic fans, we've been used to it for a very long time. Other people, not so much. That I do think that there are some concerns about the introductions for certain characters. And
yes and no, but
I don't think taking a comedic view of that particular character would have served the purpose for this film.
Absolutely, and also, to kind of talk about the interconnected universe thing here. One of the things that my husband did mention to me is like, so Metropolis is under siege here. Essentially, Metropolis is going to be destroyed by a wormhole, a black hole. Something terrible is going to happen with this dimensional rift. Spoilers, people. Where's Batman? Where's Wonder Woman? Where's other people to try and help save this thing? It's like, well, we got a couple heroes here that are in Metropolis, but if there are other heroes, I'm sure they're busy doing other things. And also, this is localized. Mm-hmm. As big of a situation this is just happening to Metropolis. Yes, the world might be eventually destroyed, but the idea here is we're just looking at Metropolis. We're not looking at the entirety of the Earth being destroyed. That's not the big focus here. The focus here is the city of Metropolis, and I do appreciate very much. And I think this is going to be one talking point that I'm hoping I never hear about this movie. Metropolis was evacuated and was fully empty when buildings started collapsing and being sliced in half, and giant, and a wormhole or a black hole opens up in the, underneath the sewer. Like, there's nobody there. Everybody's safe. There's not massive amounts of death going on compared to Man of Steel, where it's like, oh my God, he's punching his way through buildings and they're all collapsing and thousands of people are dying. The sirens go off. When I saw that part in the movie, it's like the sirens go off. Okay, Metropolis, time to evacuate. They've been through this shit before, and they're gonna go through it again. And I'm sure they're gonna rebuild it pretty well, because guess what? Metropolis gets rebuilt by the end of the movie. Everything's fine. The Rift puts things together, maybe not 100%, which pisses Mr. Terrific off a little. But it's one of those things where it's like, okay, this is a universe the rules are different from what we see in the MCU. The rules are different from what we've seen in the DC movies, of the 2010s up till now, is that this is a world that's more like the comics. If Metropolis in the comic books had like millions of people dying every, couple of issues or so,
who would live in Gotham City?
Who would live in Gotham? Who would live in Metropolis? Who would live on Earth? The Earth would have been destroyed. Everybody would have died.
I want to jump in here for a moment, because this is actually a situation. What
Ivy Town or bust.
Yeah, where are the other heroes? The film actually answers that question, and so I'm going to get to that point by going a kind of a weird way. I have a degree in creative writing and all that fun stuff, but I follow a person on TikTok. His name is Dan McClellan. Now, Dan is a biblical scholar, and is brilliant, right? He is fluent in Aramaic. He's fluent in ancient Greek. He knows how to read it, and he's one of those people. He can look at these ancient manuscripts. and learn about the Bible. And you're sitting here thinking, Caleb, we're talking about Superman. Why are you bringing this up? Because he has an interesting way, and he can teach you how to take and read anything, right? How to look at a piece of text and wrestle with it and talk about what that text says, and without having to negotiate with it. What is the actual text telling you instead of you trying to do the gap fillers? And this film, and you can take and look at fiction that way. And this film does that. There's a scene in this where Superman is, sitting there talking to Lois, and they're having a conversation. And the Justice Gang is fighting some weird thing, like big and glowy and colorful in the background. And she's just like, do you need to go do something about that? He's like, no, those are professionals. I know what that is. They've got this, right?
Yes.
That's how this world operates. If there, yes, there is a Gotham in this world. Yeah, there is a central city in this world. Yeah, there's all of these places, and all of those heroes are doing things. And I'm sure that they are aware of something because we have the sense of this kind of coordination, at least to some point. And they're all like, that's happening in Metropolis. Superman is there. Mr. Terrific is there. We've got a Green Lantern on site. There's a Hulk, and there's who knows what else going around. That's fine. They've got this, right? They will let us know when it comes to the point that they need to call us in, right? That's how this world operates.
Yeah.
And so, the reason I bring that up is because in other situations, they have not addressed that. They have not dealt with that. And I think that question is valid. Why aren't there people showing up? This one actually takes on that question in a very comical way, answers it, because this is not only a really fun, earnest movie. This is incredible, craftful storytelling.
Yeah.
There is nothing about this movie that was not just 100% tailored to what it was. Everything is important. It's all just, even the comedic bits are doing necessary work for this film. And that is what makes it such a cohesive and workable unit. And again, for my taste, and unlike Man of Steel, which again, there are parts of it that we all like.
Yeah.
It does so in a way that is aspirational and not steeped in cynicism. And I think that is so vastly important to what makes this so successful. Yeah. And I love that they work with that, and they craft that into the movie itself to answer those type of questions that they know nerds are going to ask, right? Because that's who we are as people. So I just thought they did a wonderful job with that. I like that you get kind of this fully formed embodiment of this character, because the same thing, we don't need another 20 minutes of there was a child and these people were science deniers and the planet blew up and rocket ship and ma pa, right? We don't need that. Wrap it up in about 30 seconds with some blips. And one of our friends, a person who follows this show and a friend of ours from out in California, learned a new term. He was like, in media res, like that. And that's what this is. Get the fucking, right? Like, we don't need a bunch of football. Get the fucking. And they do that in this film. They go right into it. You've got a fully formed Superman. He's got his, again, spoilers, right? You've got his fortress up there. He understands the Kryptonian technology. Everything's not on a learning curve. He's going all in. And that is fun. They get right into the mix, and he understands it. Now, he still has to learn things, right? And I love that this is a Superman that is constantly learning. And you see that in this movie, because he's not boring, right? He doesn't have everything figured out. And he's a Superman that's willing to not only admit that he makes mistakes, but he does actually make mistakes. So I think the difference in this Superman and some other versions of the characters that we've seen in more contemporary times, would you rather make a mistake in an attempt to have some type of Machiavellian, by any means necessary thing and give up who you are and kind of cross all the lines? Or would you rather make a mistake and keep who you are and say, look, if this does happen, that's fine, but I'm going to find a way around it without going, because that is what's the difference between Luthor and Superman in this movie. If you believe them, if you take them at their word, they are both people who want to defend mankind. Luthor in a very xenophobic, racist, sociopathic kind of way and profiteering kind of way, but he at least does have some semblance of the aliens are going to wipe out humanity, right? They're going to
but again, that's also so tied to his ego.
It is. Yeah. It's very much ego driven.
Only I can be humanity's savior.
I think that's another area where Superman is the other side of the coin.
Yeah. But he's Machiavellian in his efforts to do that. If you take him at his word that is his end game. Of course, he thinks he's the only person who, only I can fix it. I think we've heard that somewhere before, right? But he takes that and he goes Machiavellian with it. By any means necessary, I'll do whatever. There is no red line. I will kill as many people. I'll screw over as many people. I will pit people against each other. I will murder innocents to get to the end game. Superman will not do anything. And I love that juxtaposition because they are about as far apart from each other as they can get. And they're not willing to pull the punches on that to show this is why this person is a bad person, right? Yeah. Even if you believe in what they believe in, even if you have the same fears and same misunderstanding as they do, here's what makes this person a bad person, right? It takes the mustache twirling villain and loops it into kind of what we see in the real world, what leads people to do incredibly bad things. And it deals with it in a real way. And I think that's brilliant. It's in a comic book movie that's not afraid to show you some dude with a T on his face and floating spheres and a chick with wings and a mace. Like, that's cool.
So the one thing with Lex Luthor, and I think this is again, and we're going to go back to, how this is written. They wanted to show a completely unredeemable villain. So where Gene Hackman is kind of funny, like he's sarcastic and he's got a personality, he also doesn't seem like the kind of person who would point blank shoot someone in the head just to make Superman talk. And this Lex Luthor is like, I care so little about those around me. And what I want is so important to me. I will torture people. I will stick people in a extra dimensional pocket universe. And, like extraordinary rendition, like my ex-girlfriend away, where they will never see the light of day again or see their family again, because I am an evil person. I'm irredeemable. And I think in the fact that they did that, and yes, it's pretty shocking. Like, I was not kind of expecting this type of evil Lex Luthor. And in other media where Lex Luthor is being shown as like, this is an evil person, there's always some kind of question, like, oh, well, why doesn't Superman just do X? Or why doesn't Superman just do Y? Like, this Lex isn't all that bad. Like, why didn't Metamorpho just, like, get out? Couldn't he just, change his molecules and, like, go through the glass? Like, what's the big deal? He could save his little boy. No, they needed to show you that Lex Luthor is so evil, he will kill a baby. He has a baby in this extra-dimensional prison, basically being held hostage with like a man ready to strangle it or crack its neck or do whatever, and he won't care, just so he can get Metamorpho to make some kryptonite to make Superman weak. Like, that is it. Like, this is a person who will do anything to get what he wants, and there's no question about it. There's no like, why didn't so and so did this, or well, that's a weakness. Like, why did he even bother? I think this was done knowing full well how people will pick this apart and how us nerds and geeks will say, the what ifs and the whys and the how and the why nots and all of this. So I think this was done specifically to make Lex as evil as possible, unquestionably. Mm-hmm. So yeah, good contrast though to Superman and how good Superman is, and how great Lois is. Jesus,
yeah, big fan. I thought again, just the scene where they show who Lois is, and Bill, you touched on this, where they're doing an interview, and she takes a run at Superman.
Yeah.
Right. And she does the thing that she needs to do. And she's asking hard questions. She's asking questions that she may not necessarily believe, but they're potential.
They're questions that need to be asked.
They're questions that need to be asked. How you did this? What gives you the right to make these choices? No, I think you are correct. I believe that there's a good chance that this thing is bad, that this person is bad, but there's no facts that prove this. So what do you when you do this, what makes you what makes you not Homelander effectively, right? That's what, and she's doing this to somebody that she has a relationship with, right? But she's willing to go there at all costs to get the story and to get the truth. And I thought that was phenomenal. And I thought, just they could not have picked a better actress for that role. Just the chemistry between them, you can't make that up. It was incredibly fun. Which I'm not. It's Miss Maisel, right? Like same actress.
Yeah.
If you've watched that, it's brilliant. I completely loved it. So she's not somebody that you're going to mess around with.
No,
it's not.
That's the type of Lois that I think is probably the most important type of Lois that we've seen. We've seen Loises that are a little bit more damsel in distress sometimes, and some Loises that are just sort of like, yeah, so she's a good reporter, cool. But this, she's showing her chops. This is a Lois that I think we can all get behind.
I think they should have had the Lois from the Friendship Challenge.
A 12-year-old Lois? I don't think that would go over very well.
That's my favorite Lois.
Yeah. It's just a little 12-year-old Lois. Perry, Jesus, I'm on a story. I've got to find out who stole those bikes.
Smoking a cigarette.
Smoking a cigarette, like putting it out in Jimmy's eye. I don't know, like just being like this real brat.
Jimmy,
yeah, and I did mention that there isn't a hell of a lot of Daily Planet, and there really isn't a hell of a lot of Clark Kent.
No.
But I did think what was there worked incredibly well.
We know who those people were very quickly.
I know who those people were, and I also believe that these are people that work with each other day to day and rib each other day to day.
Yeah.
I really came up, like I said, with the chemistry is not just the principles, and it's not just even when it's an adversarial thing, like the heavy of a movie and the hero of a movie, they have to have some degree of chemistry where you're going to believe that they would banter like this. There has to be some degree of that, and
you'll believe a man can banter.
Yeah.
And before you move on, I was going to say kudos to wardrobe on that, because so much of what they do with those characters to show you who they are is just wardrobe. Cat Grant, immediately who Cat Grant is as a person.
And immediately that this is Cat Grant of 202025 and not Cat Grant of 1993.
Nope, absolutely.
Immediately. You have to tell me who that was, and I knew it.
Well, no. As soon as he came out, I was like, "Oh, that's Cat Grant!" Like immediately, and wardrobe.
And same with Steve.
Look for Steve.
Same with Steve Lombard. Yep.
Same with Jimmy.
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy was great in this.
Lothario Jimmy, and which I think is funny. I'm glad that they threw that in, because I don't know what it is about Jimmy Olsen, but Jimmy Olsen can pull so many women. Women love Jimmy Olsen. And everything, like there was a little bit of behind the scenes kind of joke promo video that they did where Lois was like looking at stuff on Jimmy's desk, and they picked up a picture. There's a picture that's on Jimmy's desk. They don't make a big deal of it in the movie Blink and You Miss It, but it's him with like two massively like endowed swimsuit models, and he's just sort of like and like the models are like like all over him, and Eve Tessmacher, like I mean. Everyone's throwing themselves at Jimmy. These women love Jimmy. And you just sort of like, whatever,
It's another franchise, but there's a wonderful moment in the Dan Slott Spider-Man Human Torch miniseries collection where he talks about where Johnny, who's a playboy, talks about the Parker effect. And it, like these incredible women that Peter always lands. And
Mary Jane.
It was a really, really funny conversation. It's like I don't land that much women, and then Johnny says, "Yeah, but look at the ones you do."
Mary Jane, Black Cat.
I almost had almost like a Peter Parker vibe, that version, that conception of Peter Parker, and in mind with that. But at the same token, it's still. There's been a few Jimmy Olsens where he ain't a teenager, there's been a few that have been like that, and they've worked to some degree, but having somebody who's still clearly a rookie in that, but also just embodied capability, and promise. I just thought he worked. That he was really well cast, and if you're a fan of Perry White, there's very little Perry White in there, but just those little bits between him and Jimmy,
you get it. You feel the dynamic.
You're like, this is just Perry. Yeah, I can't wait for the not the behind the scenes, but like the extra scenes, which I know there will be. There has to be some other.
And the thing is, these personalities are big enough that you could easily have a Daily Planet television series. You could easily have a Daily Planet. Just make some excuse that both Clark and Lois are gone for like 4 months, and you easily could have one plugged in. Talking about
just missed Lois. She just ran out for something. But anyway,
another group of people. I just want to bring up and want to know your thoughts on the Justice Gang. That's not our name.
Well, the final version of Justice Gang that includes Metamorpho who kind of was acting a little bit like Red Tornado towards the end, which is very interesting. Some of the same type of moves,
yeah,
which was interesting. But so Guy Gardner, like this is not the Justice League that anybody would ever recognize. I mean, Mr. Terrific. Yes, he does have his, like, if anybody's read The Terrifics, which was a great series that came out several years ago, good comic series. He works well in the team.
And if
also has Metamorpho.
If you like the other franchise that's coming out this summer, there's some connective.
There's some connection. There's some synchronicity, let's just say. But like, Mr. Terrific works well alone. And a lot of times, like, he does really well on his own. He's a very pragmatic person. He can team up, but he does a lot on his own. So, that kind of guy as part of the Justice Gang, and not the leader, because technically, I guess, Green Lantern's the leader. And that Green Lantern of all Green Lanterns, the least liked, the worst of them all. And then, of course, Hawkgirl, who, unfortunately, she didn't get a lot to do, Isabella Merced. She didn't have a lot to do in this one. I was kind of questioning her character. You didn't get much of a feel of her, other than the fact that she's kind of like, she doesn't have any qualms.
I also go back to people who start that as a complaint, and I said, what's the name of the movie?
Yeah, Superman. Exactly, it's Superman.
I get that too, but the name of the movie? I'm not going to give that a pass though, because you also so if nobody else knows who these characters are, if nobody knows who Metamorpho is, if they don't know who Red, well, actually, it's funny because now I want a Red Tornado movie because of that.
Yeah, no, I want to more. I want to see more Red
Terrific is. If you don't know who Cat Grant is, right? This movie does a very good job with every other character about getting you in and giving you something to latch onto that tells you, hey, this is who this person is, and this is what their personality is, right? And they do not. That is the Hawkgirl is the only character that they do not do that with at all. You get nothing
at all. But I also felt with the Engineer they didn't do that enough.
They didn't do that enough with the Engineer. Yeah. That's the other. That's which I'm really hoping that means that we're gonna getting the Engineer in there could be huge. That's big things.
And also the line that they had at the end of the movie. Well, the heroes are running the show now.
Yeah,
the metahumans are running the show. Here's a door.
Yep. But even with her, one of the things that they did with the Engineer is, she's looking at Lex, and Lex is like, I'm doing all of this, and she just goes around, I sacrificed my body and my humanity to beat these aliens. I'm just as much in that. That is motivation. That tells you everything, a lot of what you need to know about her. And so even with her, you get something to hang on.
It also leaves enough question marks over it to say, like, what pushed her.
No, and that's totally. But they don't give you that with Hawkgirl at all. Yeah. And so that is one major criticism. And that's fucking baby. But that's the only things I didn't care for in the movie. But
Baby Joey. Joey.
How could you not like? How could you not like? Baby.
I would have. Look, he could have dealt with that situation and just turned cyanide and ended a lot.
Oh my God, the mouth opens. I didn't know that.
Yes, they're called chompers.
Chompers. So I mean, talking about the characterization.
Why do you hate fun?
I don't hate fun. I just hate that fucking
Baby Joey.
I didn't do anything with him afterwards. They were just like, I'm such a doting father.
What's the name of the movie?
Superman.
Then why is there a fucking baby holding people
Superman
in prison?
And Baby Joey.
That would be a very different movie. But so speaking, going back to Superman. So this is again also a nature versus nurture kind of situation as well. Yes. So even though we don't get the origin of Superman, we're 3 years into his career as Superman, and 28, 29, 30 years into his life as Clark Kent. We get the message of Jor-El and Lara, that he plays, and this is at the early part of the movie. There's a comment that Thor, one of the Superman robots, aka Gary, makes that the message from his parents soothes him, like hearing his parents and seeing his parents soothes him, and you have the famous hologram of his parents just sort of like stoically saying a couple words about, like, you're the last son of Krypton, and we're so proud of you, and you're going to a place where you will be able to thrive and survive, and sorry we can't be there. But that message is truncated, and part of the big plot is that that Lex and the engineer find the rest of the message, where it's basically like the people of Earth are weak and are easily dominated. You need to spread your super seed all over the place, i.e., get a harem of chickies and and have lots and lots of Kryptonian babies. Yeah, get some baby mamas out there. And this, of course, turns a lot of people immediately against him, and all of this, and he's shocked because this is not how he's built his life. He built his life on the first part of that message, like his motivations are all based on I will protect, I will serve the people of this planet. But that's only part of the story, because most important are the people who actually raised him for 30 years, and that's Mom, Pa, Kent. And I think this Mom, Pa, Kent, we don't get a lot of time with them, but we know exactly who they are as soon as they show up. Not just because, well, we know Mom, Pa, Kent are good people. These are very normal, very we're just regular folks who happen to get a super baby.
They're rural country people.
Yeah.
In middle America. They're people that live all around people like me. Yeah. I know those people. I know that they use the same words, right? They're farmers. You're going to find that 20 minutes from my house here in Arkansas, that exact profile. It's what it is.
And it's saying that these people have raised this boy knowing full well that he's an alien from outer space and that he has all these powers and everything, but they instilled in him just how to be good, how to be kind, how to help, how to, be a good person, so that he could kind of take that other motivation they got from the message from his parents, which I'm sure that he didn't know until much later after he had already grown up or whatever and found that message somehow. And, whoever the origin happens, we all kind of generally know the gist anyway. He was able to incorporate that into the lessons that Mom, Pa, Kent gave him. And by the end of the movie, when we have sort of a mirror scene where he's being helped by the Superman robots, and Gary says the same thing. He's like, "Oh, show him this, show him his parents and the words of his parents, because it's so soothing and it makes him happy." And instead of the message of Jor-El and Lara, it is Mom, Pa, Kent, home videos of him as a little boy and at Christmas, and just playing airplane out in the backyard with Pa Kent. It's just sweet home movies, and that is kind of just this amazing transition. I just love those bookends. I think I have
a friend through Bear Circles who's an adoptive father, and he told me he cried for 2.5 hours after that scene.
Oh,
yeah, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about that. How do both of you feel kind of about, number one, I guess it's a two-part question. Number one, do you think that the uncorrupted message was real, that what Luther put forward about them wanting, we're actually sending you to Earth to be a god and to kind of take over? And if you think it's real, how do you guys feel about that legacy of Jor-El and maybe what that means for the history of Krypton? Because look, in the comics, that's obviously not kind of what happens. And throughout the year, Superman finds different traces of his parents.
But there have been moments of that. And one of the book that I'm going to talk about was basically the introduction of Krypton as a caste-based, antiseptic culture.
Yeah,
effectively.
Right.
And there are bits. There have been.
Mr. Oz from the past 5-7 years.
Yeah, and also, a thing like when, just pre-New 52, when they had New Krypton, and Supergirl's mother turned out to be a beast.
Yeah.
So I do think that they've played with that. My feeling is, this is if I was writing it, is that the engineers' prejudices colored what that said. And also with what Mr. Terrific said, it's oh, these are the best linguists. It's from another fucking planet,
right?
A dead planet.
A dead planet. How would you definitely know? And there's part of me that wants to feel like, if I was writing this, that harem is actually friends, and that's the Justice League eventually.
Maybe, yeah,
like that.
Mistranslations,
dispose of your enemies isn't exactly what was being said there.
I mean, you were just talking about, I follow him as well, and I can't think of what they were doing. Yeah, where he's talking about translation and how important it is to understand the motivations and the context of the words that are being translated.
Yeah.
in ancient times, but also now, because the words you might use will be different, the context might be different, the meaning behind the words may have changed very much in the 2,000 years.
Especially when he brought up when he brought up the idea of territories.
Yeah,
and it wasn't really a concern. Yeah. I know.
So
he came out.
And of course, we might find out a little bit more in Supergirl next year. Maybe they will have, because she does actually remember Krypton and she grew up there. Maybe we'll see a scene of what Krypton was like while she was there. Maybe not. Maybe we won't. Maybe it won't matter. And it's just, Supergirl, in a bar with Crypto on a planet, getting, having a little girl come up to her and say, "Can you help me avenge my father?" And that's where it starts. We'll see that, because that'll be. I'm so excited for Supergirl
also,
now.
You mentioned Supergirl. So Tom King gets a credit in this film because he went and he obviously not one of the writers, but he does get credit for helping out and everything, and he's been involved. So we get about 30 seconds worth of Supergirl in this, and she's coming in to collect her things and play with Crypto, and he's like, well, where did she come from? Oh, she goes off world to party, red suns, that way she can get drunk. I am convinced that was a nod to the really, really great Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow miniseries.
Well, yeah,
of course. No, that they've been very open that
I haven't paid attention.
They've been very open that the upcoming film is based on that.
Okay, so it is based on that. Okay, good. I haven't caught any of that.
Yeah.
And we'll see.
I think though, with the caveat that Crypto already went through enough in this film.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, we might still see him in the next film too, because
we're going to see him in the next film, but understand Crypto's.
I hope we get Metamorpho. I want to see Metamorpho.
Metamorpho.
Yeah, and you want to see Metamorpho eat Baby Joey, I bet.
I mean, I'm not out of the question. I don't want. Yeah, Baby Joey's fine. We just don't need him anymore.
I hope the DC. I hope there's a Baby Joey cameo in every DC Studios film. I hope he's in fucking Swamp Thing.
Baby Joey becomes the Baby Yoda of the DC universe. He's in everything. He's just something really cute and throws up on stuff.
He's sitting there eating a Swamp Thing yam. Just
oh, Baby Joey.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to cover. But in terms of Easter eggs, what were some of your favorites?
I'll jump in first. I've got a really good one. Right. It was the nod to Smallville. Right. This is not LexCorp. It's Luthor Corp.
Well, yeah. And some of the interviews they said, like, how many megalomaniacs name themselves after the first name?
Right, it's always the last name, right? And that's a nod to Smallville, and there were a couple other nods to Smallville in this, and I thought that was really cool.
Mm-hmm.
I loved. Do you guys catch what country was above the not Moravia?
It was Kandahar, wasn't it?
Yeah. No, it was Markovia.
Markovia. Right. Yeah.
And also, if you notice some of the street signs in Metropolis, they indicated how many miles Gotham City and Bloodhaven were.
Nice.
Yeah, so.
There were some of the we talk about the extra dimensional prison. There was apparently, and I haven't caught all of them, but there's apparently some snips of people who think that those are different characters, and they're naming who some of those characters could be. I'm not sure how true those are, but I want to dive more into that to see who all gets shown in that, and see who we might have been introduced to even subversively.
Yeah, and I know that they gave Michael Ian Black's character like a very Tucker Carlson type of name.
Yeah.
In that, and I thought when we saw that in the credits that was going to be Jack Ryder. I really did. Because he probably could pull off the Creeper. He probably could pull off.
He probably could.
Yeah.
Colonel Flag, I think, is a good one.
Yep. Yeah. And he actually had a pretty, I mean, not sizable, but it was like a meaty cameo because he had more scenes, I think, than some of the other like little blink and you miss some people. And it is the same Flag Senior as the Creature Commandos Flag. So
that bit of fandom drives me crazy. These are the people I want to smack with a brick. When there was, why didn't he have gray hair? It's like, yeah, it's just for men. Fuck, he was on a fucking mission. Shut up.
Yeah.
You know, that if you care about that,
people color their hair sometimes.
People
but you know, I enjoy just the little things. Seeing Stag Industries, you know, having Superman run into Stag Industries,
Big Belly Burger, Chitters,
Big Belly Burger, seeing Sapphire at the end, like hanging out in an apartment with Metamorpho and Baby Joey, and just you know, just kind of sitting there. It's like, you're Sapphire. You know, it's just just little bits here and there, I think, are good, because it doesn't have to be. He doesn't have to have everything.
No.
They don't have to have everything. So, you know.
You know what? If you're in the sandbox, you may as well play with some of them.
Might as well. Throw a couple things in that are going to be shared, you know, among there, because that's how DC does it. DC, every time there's a fast food restaurant in a DC comic, it's Big Belly Burger. Every time that, you know, there's some kind of, you know, like technological thing, some big tech company, it's like, oh, is that Cord Industries, or is that LexCorp, LuthorCorp here, or, you know, Wayne, or whatever, you know. So
yeah, you know what? And now, Caleb, now as you're thinking it, I'm totally in your camp about Hawkgirl, because we don't have the background if she's from an Egyptian background or if she's from an Thanagarian background.
You get nothing.
Superman interacting with another alien would put another bit of color onto that. So I'm leaning towards that she's not, but however they do it, there always is a connection.
We know more about that fucking baby than we do about Hawkgirl.
Yeah. Well, there's Martian Manhunter. I was actually, so I don't know about you. This is a stupid question, and we may not have the answer. But in the Pocket Dimension, Mr. I've forgotten the name, the creature that is controlling the moving platform, kind of looks like how white Martians are.
Yeah, it looked like a white Martian. I think it was a white Martian. I mean,
it could have been.
I think that was the illusion there.
It could have been, or it could have been something else, another genetic, you know, creation of LuthorCorp. But, you know, that I was wondering about that, because it's like, well, you know, since the idea of aliens, like, no, there are no aliens, or, you know, we don't have like an alien invasion of creatures that are known yet. Here, is that, you know, is it a Martian? Is it a white Martian?
But also, since we have had the references that at least metahumans have been known for 300 years, you know, maybe going back to Sharon the Ferryman, you know, that in mythology, that this is, you know, we'll see.
Yeah,
it's a great place to start. It's great that we have these questions.
Yeah.
You know, it's great that we have these questions.
And this is the same kind of question that you would have if you picked up a comic book, any comic book that's been running for 80 plus years, and just like open it up and said, oh, who are these characters? Oh, these characters look kind of cool. Or, oh, you know, that's an interesting question. Let me see what I can find out about that.
Okay, special effects.
Very
no
good.
Complaints. No complaints at all.
Music.
There wasn't anything that I was like, oh my god, like there wasn't that Matrix moment. But I was no complaints across the board. I thought they were really, really, really well done.
Music.
So I was going to ask you about that. So because this is a James Gunn movie, you know, James music plays really heavily in James Gunn's. I think the soundtrack that was there was great. There's some really good songs on there, but it is not as needle drop heavy, I think, as some of his other movies in the past.
Yeah.
And I don't know that it needed to be. So I thought that was really, really well guarded. And the songs that he does use pack a punch.
Yep. I think it's just amazing that, you know, a 15-year-old Teddy Bears track with Iggy Pop guesting is probably going to go at least certified at least platinum. You know?
Oh yeah.
You know, I mean, with the focus that has been on that, but with the score, I've also found this out. What James Gunn does with the symphonic score is that's recorded early on in the process, and he plays that during certain scenes to the actors. That seems to be
that's good, because I mean that sets the tone.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good soundtrack. Yeah, like Caleb said, there's not a lot of you know, pop culture. This is not a mixtape like Guardians of the Galaxy movie. you know. But there is one interesting original song that's for the end of it, but it references something that they talk about a couple times in the movie, and that's by I believe it's the Mighty Crabjoys, which is a band, you know, that is fictional, and the music was written by James Gunn. This funny song talking about like being punk rock and
they
all
even
that.
have Mighty Crabjoys merch.
They do.
Yeah. Which is fun, and I think that's gonna be just one of those cute little trivia things that comes out of this movie that maybe 20 years from now people will be like, hey, look, a Mighty Crabjoys t-shirt. Oh yeah, it's from that movie. You know, be kind of cool.
Also thought it was, I mean, because, you know, James Gunn centers your mind in music, though. I was wondering if that was like a joke on like the Mighty Boss Tones. That was the first that popped into my head, and there were a couple other things in that. I was like, I wonder if they changed that name. Like that's a funny reference.
Yeah.
That's what
you know, and that could be something. That could be just like an inside joke that's been going around him and his friends for like 5 years or something. And you know, I wouldn't put that past him.
They probably did. They probably did stuff like that when he was a trauma. You know, like that. Just who knows.
And you know, I do think that some of the criticisms are valid. There is a bit of chaos to the film.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's moments where it is chaotic. You know, some of the characters that aren't as finely developed as some others. I think that's a valid criticism. But I also feel, honestly, that if people didn't like this film, there's something wrong with you. I really do. You hate fun.
There's nothing in this film not to like. I thought it was just fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, I loved it, but I mean, I do know people who walked away. It was like, yeah, it was great. It was good. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine. And like I was like a fair. Like I mean, I'll take that too. I loved it. I loved this movie. I will
in
go back
terms
and see
of box office, I think this film is going to have a hell of a lot of repeat viewing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is going to be like the most repeat viewing of a film in some time. You know, I think since Spider-Man, No Way Home, whatever the fuck the pandemic one was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, but cool.
Or Barbie.
Very cool.
There was a lot of repeat viewing with Barbie. So,
yeah.
It just, I think that if you know, James Gunn said I wanted to make people, you know, believe in heroes again, and I think that was his mission. It was a mission well accomplished in this film.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So agreed.
I also think with the film that the social media marketing for this movie has been phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
There's been a lot of clever content.
Yeah.
Been put, you know.
A lot of that, like I mentioned, like the behind the scenes sort of the actors in character talking about, you know, their deaths at the Daily Planet and just kind of going through things, but also a lot of the usual, you know, Vanity Fair interviews and the, you know, viral videos where they have to answer questions about each other, like just things like that. I mean, there's always a lot of that, but there's so much to watch.
As a former resident of the state, thank you for finally putting Metropolis in Delaware, as has been the case in the comics since 1977, which also means that Gotham City's in New Jersey. So I was very, very happy to see that. Very happy to see that.
Yeah.
So I said earlier that this film, and especially the way that Mr. Terrific was done in this film, kind of reminded me a lot of some of the Justice League International stuff like that. I want to see a red tornado. Like I think that this movie has proven to me that we could see a legitimately good red tornado in film, and I would absolutely love it. Were there any like moments in this film that you saw me like, this gives me faith that I could see this character on the big screen?
Oh, well, I think across the board, the Green Lantern Corps.
Green Lantern. This is so seeing how Nathan Fillion was an awesome Guy Gardner. Like the entire time. Yeah. He was awesome. But the fact that he showcased how Green Lantern powers work in a way that didn't look as fake and cartoony as the, you know, the other Green Lantern movie, the Ryan Reynolds Green movie, which I enjoyed, but it is not a good movie. But but he did it in a way that's very Guy Gardner. Like it was very
the middle
character perfect. The middle finger's popping up out of the desert. Just awesome. The baseball bats that showed up like to knock the dimensional imp that was flying around. Just a lot of like I gave him oven mitts. Like, these things are very much like a Green Lantern.
I know from everything that we've read about lanterns that it doesn't sound that cosmic.
No. But it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
And that might be the best way to introduce the concept too.
Absolutely. I mean, like Green Lanterns, if you had a magic ring that made everything that you thought about, real and solid, you could go one of two ways. You could just go way crazy over the top and just like, now this town's on lockdown, like just put a little lockbox on and slowly, carry everybody away. Or you could just do it as subtly as possible, which I think this is going to be more, the TV show is going to be a very well done, subtle use of Green Lantern abilities. They don't have to go crazy over top, but maybe there'll be some flashbacks or, other moments where they look at what life in the core is like off-world, things like that. But they could do it either way. They could do it very much on Earth. They could do it very much in space. It doesn't matter.
One criticism I heard from somebody is that he didn't believe that people would turn against Superman so quickly. And all I could think about is the comment section of the Asbury Park Press in Springsteen.
Yeah.
That's all I can think about.
Yeah. No, it's... And also keep in mind that, I think they kind of forgot, there are literally 10,000 monkeys that have been genetically modified to just post shit.
I get so upset about that.
Post shit on message boards all day.
What's been alleged, yeah.
But I love that was like, he's like, I'm gonna, like, you're an internet monkey, like, because that was a middle finger to a whole lot of the people who are doing the literal thing right now, right? Because that is happening right now. There are people who are trashing this movie that have not seen this movie, that will not see this movie, or that don't hold the beliefs about that, but for some reason, identity politics or whatever, what have you, are already trashing this movie.
And posting it everywhere possible so that it sounds to amplify that message. If it's one person doing it 50 times, it sounds like 50 people. You know?
It's a real thing, and I love that he's like, we know what you are, and we're gonna literally make fun of you in the movie that you're doing this exact thing for.
Absolutely.
Okay, James Gunn, be punk rock. Go ahead, brother.
And guess what? He wrote that 2-3 years ago, so it's really
there's a little bit of scary kind of foreshadowing there, considering that this script was kind of locked 2 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a little scary.
But yeah, I love this movie. I can't wait to see it again. And I'm, this so far has been the best comic book movie I've seen this year, and the most fun.
I think it's the best comic book movie I've seen in many years.
Yeah. I agree with that.
Many years.
Now, Fantastic Four comes out in just over a week, so we'll see if Superman, in terms of like how the film is. I know I'm going to love Fantastic Four, but will I love it as much as Superman? I mean, two different worlds, two different things.
It's two different worlds. It's two different franchises. I'm all on board for Fantastic Summer. I'm all on board for that.
Absolutely.
And I've said this before. At the end of the day, like, I want every movie to be good. I want every movie to be enjoyable. Some I'm going to like more than others. There have been movies that we've seen that I've went and watched. I'm like, look, it's not a great movie, but it was a fun way to spend a Friday night with my husband, go out on a date, have a hot dog, watch a film. It wasn't what I wanted, but it's still like, if that's the worst part that happens to my day, I'm living a privileged and pretty amazing life.
Yeah.
And so even if Fantastic Four does not blow me out of the water, right? If it's not the best thing I've ever seen, if it's entertaining, I mean, I'm sure we'll have stuff to say about it. I hope it makes me think about things, because that's never a wasted moment. So I'm going to be like, I'm not going to have wasted my money. I hope. I went into Superman thinking I want this to be a good film. I hope I leave this entertained, right? Because it is an entertaining movie. It did that and so much more. And I think if that's what you say, again, it's trying to separate some degree of cynicism from, kind of this thing that we do, which is, critiquing things for good, bad, or otherwise, which we do because that's who we are as people, and we're kind of trained to do. But I hope I leave with more than I expected, right? And I think if you just set your expectations at an even keel, it's hard to be disappointed on that unless, it is Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern. But
you know what? Ryan Reynolds' Green Lantern was the last movie I saw as a midnight movie, and I have no regrets about that.
The only I joke when I say that. The only superhero movie that I legitimately regret seeing was that one Fantastic Four movie, ironically.
I don't even mind those.
I was not. Yeah, I was just like,
I always bring this up. From the time that I was how old was I when Superman came out? 79. So
78. 10 years old.
I would have been 12 years old when Superman film came out, and to the time that I was 21, there were 5 superhero movies in total.
Yeah,
5 superhero movies in total. 4 Supermen and 1 Swamp Thing, and that was it.
Oh, 2 Swamp Things.
No, 89.
Return.
No, Return
of the Jedi. That's right. 89.
Yeah. Was 89.
When did Howard the Duck come out?
86, but that's not a superhero film. It's a comic book film, but it's not a superhero.
Yeah, I know. I'm messing with you.
Came out. That's the worst film ever. But so I have a very low bar. I haven't seen Madam Web yet.
I haven't either.
I wouldn't be surprised if I end up saying like, I kind of like Madam Web. I'm the worst. I'm the worst judge. I'm the worst judge of the low threshold for enjoyment of a super, because I'm so amazed that we even get them.
Right. Well, I think too, none of us go into a movie wanting to dislike it, which is a weird thing. That is a weird thing that people absolutely do. They go into something hoping they dislike it. I don't hate watch things.
Never will understand hate watching. Like, your time on this earth is so short. Why are you doing that?
I watch movies that I know are going to be terrible, but I don't watch them because I want to feel bad after watching them. That's not hate watching. It's not. Yeah, exactly. It's not hate watching. This is watching a movie because I know it's going to be bad, but I will find enjoyment in the campiness, in the silliness, and the mistakes, and the whatever. And that's the difference, I think, between that and hate watching.
That even comes with me with a superhero film like Punisher Warzone. Holy shit. Yes. There's some awful acting in that, but I still enjoy it in a sense.
Yeah.
Is that right, brother? Yes, brother. Seriously, like the guy playing, just see it. It's unreal how bad it is.
Well, look, but I think bringing this full circle, James Gunn is a trauma guy, right?
Yeah.
And I like watching a lot of trauma movies because they're so bad they're good sometimes, and that's a lot of B and C movies. If you like B and C movies, then you're gonna watch them. Honestly, we used to watch Punisher Warzone all the time and just die laughing, because if you approach it as if it's supposed to be comically bad, then it is comically bad and it's funny and it's enjoyable. It's almost a comedy in that sense.
Hey, I was raised on MST3K, so like that's what I watched. From the time that I first saw my first episode when I was like 9 or 10 years old.
Yeah,
I mean,
sometimes it's down to performance. I mean, Nicolas Cage and Ghost Rider.
Yeah,
it's fun to watch.
I heard you like that Italian food.
Oh yeah,
I mean, like that was a choice. Well, it was a choice.
There's a lot of choices that were made in that movie, but I still enjoyed it. I enjoyed the sequel too.
Yeah.
I watched it. I won't say that I enjoyed it, but it wasn't the worst time I've ever had. But
I always say, like, if you're looking to somebody to like just bash superhero films left and right, I'm not the person to do it.
Yeah, no.
I feel very lucky. I think it always made sense to me that superhero films could work. A storyboard for a film is a comic book for all intents and purposes. I always thought stuff would work. And I'm just glad I lived long enough that the technology caught up to tell a lot of these stories.
True. Well, speaking of the comic books,
transition.
Bill mentioned this right at the beginning. What we do every time we see a comic book movie, we have to go back to the source material and give you some recommendations and things to read that we think you'll enjoy because we enjoyed them too. Just that give you a little bit more meat in the story. Now, Superman, there's what 80, almost 90. Like there's a lot. There's a lot of meat to consume when it comes to Superman stories. So we picked three that I think are really great for understanding where Superman is now, where he's been over the past 30, 40 years, and kind of like the idea, some of the ideas that are played with in James Gunn's Superman come from some of the source material as well, like some of the ways that Superman interacts and the little story beats, things like that. Populate the new movie. So yeah, I don't know. Do we want to get into those?
I think, and we probably should do that in chronological order.
Sure.
Does that sound right? So that'll be me,
Yeah.
then Steve, then Caleb, right? Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right. So my choice is a bit old at this point, but I think it was a seminal work, not above criticism, but it was a much needed step. And so for my choice, I'm going with The Man of Steel, which was a 6-issue miniseries in 1986, written and drawn by John Byrne, which totally overhauled Superman. This was right after Crisis on Infinite Earths, which, again, at least for a time, DC went from being a multiverse to a single universe. And, that was supposed to, be a jumping on point for a lot of things. And that gave the perfect opportunity to, to tweak and retcon. Keep in mind, 1986 is basically golden age of comics. There's like a second golden age. When you think Man of Steel #1 came out within 5.5 months of both the Dark Knight Returns #1, Watchmen #1, and on the other side, Wonder Woman's reinvention by George Perez. It's kind of staggering, how much reinvention there was. Also, the Blaha Justice League, Suicide Squad, DC in particular. '86 was a very, very, very good year. Very good year. So, what do we have here with Man of Steel? Apart from the narrative, Superman at that point in time had been drawn primarily by the same artist, Kurt Swan, for God, at that point, 60, like a hell, at least 25 years. I think at least from 60 on, that Kurt Swan was the principal artist. And I love Kurt Swan's work, especially Legion. Just very clean line. But we needed something else. At that point, we needed an overhaul. And boy, did we get it with Superman. And there are changes that happened in this book, in the 6 issues, which basically retell the origin in the first few years of Superman's activity in this new version of the DC universe, that directly correlate with the film that just came out. There's a number of things that happen in this book that they carried upon. And Steve, maybe if we can go through some of the pictures I'll show. First of all, this was the first widely available variant cover. If you know the comic book industry, sometimes variant covers have save titles, because people will buy multiple copies of one. And this was the first time. The first cover you saw was the newsstand cover. This cover was only available in the comic shops. There was the time that mattered. And we have the two covers, and God knows I have multiple copies of both because you had to. Especially when books were only 75 cents. So here we have the two covers, and we're introduced to a new version of Krypton. And again, with what I said in the film, it's a very antiseptic, boring type of planet. Steve, if you can go to the next image, it should be there. So we have look, and in the past when we had depictions um, of Krypton, it was almost like space opera fun, with shining cities and people who were effectively in uniforms. And here we have a very different interpretation of Jor-El and Lara, Superman's birth parents. Um, even here, they're not even touching his son. His son's in a birthing chamber. It shows that this is not the Krypton we're used to, and that's something that will have to be addressed later on. And if you can go over to some of the other images we have here, we have Krypton exploding. It's a very green explosion, and that's going to have some ramifications. And Steve, if you can just keep going, we have Superman, who was not in uh, a uh, a boy, this is good radio. Sorry, folks. Uh, he's not in a costume that was tailor made for him. It's something he and his mother put together. They used the S, not knowing that this was the symbol for hope as the crest of the House of L. They thought it looked like an S, and S goes with Superman. And so this is the first time that we see him actually in any kind of uniform, because he was acting underneath. And this is also something very important that John Byrne took away, was his career as Superboy. That was 86. So, Steve, if you can keep going to the next cover. In the second issue, we have the introduction to Lois Lane, and she's a very feisty modern day reporter. She's not somebody that's going to wilt or swoon over Superman. And one of the really cool dynamics within the early Byrne years was that Superman was determined to win Lois over as Clark and not as Superman, and he did. So if you go through some of the things, it turns out that Lois was scooped by the new reporter Clark Kent on the biggest breaking story, which was the debut of Superman. So they actually started off in a much more adversarial relationship than we're used to seeing. We also have some significant tweaks with his relationship with Batman. As we had for 35 years, they shared a title together in World's Finest Comics, and were clearly best friends. But in this version of Superman, there is some distance between the two of them. They're not exactly trusting of each other. Again, as time went on, they saw that the Superman Batman friendship worked. But again, this was seismic. If you go to the next frame here, the last comment that Batman has, Steve, if you can go to the next page, a remarkable man, all things considered, who knows, in a different reality, I might have called him friend. That's a major change for the character. Doesn't mean he can't have interactions, but it isn't going to be the same as we had previously seen. So those were some images that I had. There are additional issues. Each issue focuses on one particular character: Superman, in order: Superman, Lois Lane, Batman, Lex Luthor, Bizarro, Lana Lang. The last kind of ties everything together, with Lana knowing that who Superman was, and being the X and what that might entail. Um, some other things that Byrne introduced that have stuck was Lex Luthor not as a super scientist, but as a tycoon. That's followed the character ever since. The first time that we have Bizarro introduced in this, he's actually a clone of Superman and not an intergalactic figure. Um, Again, things that have really changed the character, but most importantly, there's a significant depowering um, of the character. As we left the golden age and the bronze age and entered the pre-crisis age, at the point Superman was almost omnipotent. And how do you develop conflicts with that? Why would he bother hanging out with the Justice League when he could take care of stuff in seconds and not even endanger his friends? And here we had a Superman whose clothes can tear, who gets a bit beat up, and that carried over certainly into this film. His outfit is dirtier more often than it's clean.
Yeah.
And that's because he would be fighting, and it would not be pristine. And um, I think that was a very important change for the character, because when you have an antagonist that is not gettable, um,
Mm-hmm.
man, you're stuck with you're stuck as a writer. And I just think they did such a good job. And I just want to show off my copy. There are many different versions of the Man of Steel. It's a never left print from 1987 onward. But my version was a little bit special. Again, 1987 is, the gestation, just the first steps of how we know graphic novels to really exist. And this was a version of a trade that you could not buy. You had to win it. And if you won it in a contest, you got a copy and your local comic shop got a copy. So Captain Bluehen at the University of Delaware gave me a call and said, "Hey, looks like we're both getting a copy of the Man of Steel." I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And I think this is something, especially, I think both of you guys would really dig this. It's not necessarily a reprint. What they really do here is they just bound existing copies of the comics into and I know there were other ones that did that. Love and Rockets. There's a couple of early trades that were along the same format. But seeing the ads, I don't know, it's kind of cool.
Well, it's almost like they do that with comics now, where they'll do the what do they call it? There's a special word for it, where they show all the ads and stuff that were in.
Like the facsimile.
Oh, the facsimile.
Yeah. Sorry, I couldn't think. It's late on a Sunday, but I like that. I mean, same thing. I love the facsimile edition, so you can go and see what was actually being printed, all the ads and stuff. It's fun.
I just thought, I think this is as flawed as some ramifications of this are. I do think this was an important step for the character, and the reading holds up. Yeah, it's exposition heavy. It was 1986; they hadn't gotten the sophistication down yet, but the art's great. It's Byrne at his post X-Men peak, and it's also interesting that the title that he was on immediately preceding this was Fantastic Four. So it could be a Byrne summer as well, a super fantastic Byrne summer for you if you want to check out books. That's my choice, The Man of Steel by John Byrne.
Yeah, to that credit, everybody I know who is a Superman aficionado, like that is John Byrne is the most important to them as far as the modern era goes. Is probably the second or third most important people to Superman, behind the people who actually created him.
Yeah,
and they credit that for everything that it did. So I mean, it's hugely important.
I'm not saying it's perfect. It's not. It's not. And there's some weird stuff when he and Big Barda make a porno. I mean, there's some weird stuff that goes on in the 2 years that happened. Look at Steve. He's like, what?
That was Sleaze or Sleazo
and I think the biggest criticism about Byrne is it's very difficult for somebody to follow him without doing another shakeup, just because he has such a very distinct vocabulary, and there's so much foreshadowing. That certainly was the case with Fantastic Four. I mean, 2 issues in, and it was like the book was lousy after he left, and it took it took decades to get a really interesting run on that again. But I think with this, it's such an important narrative that I'm happy that DC has treated it well, and it's out there for you. So okay, over to Steve chronologically with a book that I also really like.
So this one it kind of follows in the footsteps of John Byrne's Man of Steel, where it's retelling an early part of Superman's career. So, him deciding to become Superman, and then, starting his superheroing in Metropolis. But it also focuses a lot on Clark Kent, which, I think if you've read All-Star Superman, there's some really great, things that Morrison does sort of about how Superman becomes Clark Kent, how that works, how the whole dynamic works with him and his, with that being his, or at least the nerdy version of Clark Kent that works at the Daily Planet versus Superman, who saves people. But this is the book Superman Birthright. Here's my DC Compact version. So yeah, everybody can send me hate mail if they want about how Compact is terrible. It's like, hello, Digest have existed for a very long time, and this is bigger than a Digest. But anyway, so Superman Birthright,
cheap,
and it's cheap, so anybody can get it. So if you're not going to just get DC Infinite and be able to read millions of comics.
I love it when Steve uses his tagline. Just anybody can get it.
Anybody can get it. Anybody can get it.
Here's my copy. I've got the hardcover deluxe copy. I got that.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful. And there's several different versions of this.
Single issues.
Yeah, but this came out in 2003. So it was written by another very big name in comic book authorship, Mark Waid, who's been around between Marvel and DC. So yeah, I mean his contributions are very numerous, with many big name characters. Superman Birthright being one of the big ones here for Superman. And the art here is between Leinil Yu, so an early Leinil Yu in the 2000s, and Gary Allen Gillen. I'm going to butcher that last name, but just excellent work all around with everybody. And in this story, we, go past the, yes, Krypton blew up, and, here's Superman, Kal-El was sent as a baby to Kansas, but it picks up in the first issue, issue and a half, about what Clark was up to through college and what he did immediately after college. He knew he wanted to be a journalist. He thought that was a great way for him to, to help people by bringing, stories of justice and, struggle from all over the world. And presenting them to readership as a freelance journalist. So the whole working at the Daily Planet doesn't come out of the blue. He's been doing it for several years, and it picks up with him as a 25-year-old in Africa, talking about a local struggle in an African country between a dominant group that kind of runs the country, it's the top of society, and then sort of the undercast, a tribe of people who came in a couple hundred years later, but it's been they've been there for hundreds of years, but have been treated as a downtrodden group. And through his actions as a journalist, he thinks he's helping, but realizes that he might be able to do a little bit more as by leaning into his powers. And when he does, he actually decides that it's probably a good thing for him to go and help people as Superman. He doesn't have a name yet. He's just Clark. And his parents are like, well, you gotta have some kind of secret identity or something. And he's like, you know what? I'm gonna figure out how to be a Clark Kent. I'm gonna be Clark Kent, but Clark Kent that's just going to be the real me. But so people can't really identify me as the superpowered person that's going to be, fighting for their lives. And in this scene right here, this is probably one of my favorite scenes here. Clark and his mother are just talking about how he needs to present himself. So, slouch a little bit. Don't wear tight clothes. Everybody can see your abs from there. People are going to be, recognizing you immediately. Wear some baggier clothes. Cover up a little bit more. Mess up your hair a bit, or keep your hair in a particular way, and lower your voice. Do some things that people do as actors to look like background people, because that's how you're going to be able to go unnoticed. And then, of course, the big scene, he gets Pa's glasses, and they're like, yeah, it hides your eyes, because your eyes are this gorgeous blue that are immediately noticeable. This way, you can't really see your eyes. So this kind of just gives him the development of how to be a Clark Kent. And he, of course, goes off to Daily Planet, gets hired because of his history of freelance work, excellent freelance work. So it's not just hey, I need a job. Mr. White, you have something for me. Here's a history of being, a good journalist. where he of course meets Lois Lane and all of that. And in his first, major, way of saving people, there's a bunch of like drones and things that are, going crazy across the city, destroying things with security drones that have been provided by none other than somebody over in Lex Luthor's neck of the world. And he finds out that Lex Luthor is behind some of these, these things going crazy and hurting people. And it turns out that he and Lex, and again, this is kind of like a bit of a change, but also something that kind of tied in with what was happening in Smallville at the time. And that is, that Lex and Clark knew each other when they were younger in Smallville. In this one, I guess when they were both 15, Lex is sort of like the crazy super genius who goes into the school, and Clark is the, kind kid who wants to be his friend. And of course, Lex shows us crazy, blows up his house, kills his dad by accident, sort of, by experimenting with kryptonite, and then disappears. And this is where he's ended up in Metropolis as the foremost astrobiologist and major tycoon. And from there, his obsession, obviously, with this Superman person. He recognizes the shield from the piece of kryptonite that he has that has a little bit of information from Krypton. And he uses that to manipulate the public's opinion of this mysterious defender, this mysterious Superman who's shown up, by projecting, these images that he is finding from old Krypton to show that, hey, there's this advanced alien civilization that's going to be taking over Metropolis, and look how horrible they are, and Superman's just basically the first vanguard. So that's pretty much what happens throughout the series, is that, Lex is finding a way to manipulate the public's opinion of Superman very early on in Superman's career to have them fear him and want to, capture him and destroy him because he's part of like an evil alien force of Kryptonians that are coming to enslave humanity, which again we saw a little bit of in the Superman film. So that's an interesting kind of way to start off this relationship between Lex and Superman, where he sees Superman as the alien that he is, but also tries to manipulate public opinion in a way that turns it against him. And it has some beautiful artwork. This image on, if you're seeing the streaming, this panel is Superman using the shield, the S shield that fell off one of the giant machines that Lex has created to impersonate an alien invasion fleet of Kryptonians, in order to protect a little girl from some mortar shells that are being shot at them. And his S has been ripped off of his costume, but he picks up this giant S to kind of, to defend these people from more harm. So it's just that, it's a great story. The art is pretty good. There's some moments I think where, it gets a little rough. And of course, when you're working with two different artists, that can sometimes happen. But I loved it. I love the story. I think it has a lot of resonance for, a current Superman story. So it kind of bridges the gap between Man of Steel in the mid 80s to, the current, I guess, post New 52, post Rebirth. This is really where we're getting a lot of that same feel of that Superman. But it's also showing this origin of how Superman kind of got to that position and how he developed who he is as a hero. Where it's not just, he wasn't Superboy in this one either. But just like Man of Steel, there's no Superboy here. But he is, he's a foremost journalist. He's, a person who loves humanity, and a person who doesn't know too much about his history until this point. So
I think even with this story and elements that may not work as canon in the present day, it's such a fine character study that I do think that this is a necessary read. And this is a book that has one of my all-time favorite Superman moments when he reveals that he's a vegetarian, because you can see the auras of the animals, and he can also see them dissipate when they die. And that's such a nice moment.
Yeah, I think this is that page where he's in Africa. He's reading sort of the holographic library that he that was left for him in his ship. But he talks about the auras that living people have, and this is sort of talking about a power of Superman's that they don't really spend a lot of time talking about modern wise, but this one, he sees auras around living beings, and in this book as well, he sees radio waves and transmissions and things like that. He can actually see that allows him to find that Lex Luthor is behind a lot of these these things that are happening. But just that moment is really, it's a very interesting character moment where it's like, oh, Superman actually is super in a very different way, and in kind of a almost metaphysical, supernatural, woo-woo almost way. Where we can see, where we can see sort of life energy.
For science that we've yet to understand.
Yeah, it could be, but it's
I don't see it that way.
Like seeing
I think it's also these declarations just shows that at heart he's just a good person.
Yeah,
he's just a good person.
Oh yeah. So
that's his most important trait. That's his biggest superpower.
You were touching on kind of this notion again that we saw yet again of the alien invasion and stuff like that. And one of the things that I think Mark Waid does really, really good here too, and it follows up on some of the stuff, or actually I need to go back and check the dates, but we see that alien invasion really come to the surface when Frank Miller does Dark Knight 3, I think is what it was, where the Kandor, the city of Kandor, those Kryptonians come out of there and become a fighting force that Superman has to stand against too. So like it is that there is that notion too, and I think they played with it really well there. And I'm not, like I said, I want to go back and kind of look at the dates on those, but I thought that was a
there's
moment.
A big gap.
There's a gulf.
A huge gap. Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, Caleb, you got a little more recent.
So mine is as Bill's kind of said, mine is the most contemporary. In fact, this came out 2023 and 2024. But the book I want to tell people to go check out and read, specifically because it is about the character of Superman and really who he is it's a book called Superman Lost that again wrapped up last year. This was written by Christopher Priest and Carlo Pagulian, and a 12-issue series. When I picked it up, I didn't know what to think of it. And you see the cover that we're showing here, which is Superman flying through a kind of post-apocalyptic city, and he's in like a stark white suit, except for the symbol, the S on his chest is outlined in the yellow. You don't really know what's going on. And so when I saw this, I had read, I am a fan of Christopher Priest. I think his Black Panther run is phenomenal. I like a lot of stuff that Christopher Priest has done. But this was on the backdrop of a Justice League run that Christopher Priest did that I didn't really care for. And so I wanted to go back and see, okay, well, let's see what he's doing with this character here. And I'm very glad I did, because for me, this book became sort of an instant classic. And I think it's on the track to kind of be that, right? I think this is going to be in 10 years, this is going to be a hardcover collection that you can still find on the shelves with things like Birthright, right? I think that it's going to stand the test of time, kind of because of the nature of what it is and how it works. And just kind of tell you a little bit about the plot without going through all 12 issues, but effectively, Superman and Lois are having a day, right? They're hanging out, they're being a couple, they're having that thing where they're both busy, middle-aged adults with life, and oh, your phone's ringing, okay, my phone's going to ring, who's going to have to do what? Well, Superman gets that beep, right? He has to go on what he assumes is just going to be a small mission to the Justice League, where they're going to go and go deal with something. And Lois doesn't think anything about it. She's just going to go back on her day. And in a few hours, she walks in, and lo and behold, sure enough, there's Superman standing there. Except he's just kind of looking out in the middle of nowhere, and he's not speaking, and he's kind of just catatonic. And she's talking to him. She's like, "What's up with this?" And yada yada. Like, what happened? It's only been a few hours. And he kind of looks at her and is like, "What?" This kind of just spaced out that we're showing you on here. And he says, "A few hours, Lois. I've been gone for 20 years. I've been out of this picture." And in that moment, you actually, for a second, as the reader, you have to sit and grapple with how weird and how chaotic and how unplanned and untethered this life must be, and how isolating this life must be. I don't like time travel, timey-wimey stories like that. But I mean, you have to comport with that with this world. And 6 hours for her where her husband might go out, weird things are going to happen. And she knows time travel, and she might show up and her husband may have been gone for 20 years and come back and he's just in this catatonic state. And you have to reckon with that for just a little bit. Like, what happened? What's going on with this? Because that's the life that this person and this family and these metahumans live. I mean, it's just part of the reality that they have to deal with. And so what happens in this is this mission that they thought was going to be easy. They go into something's going on in international waters, which might not be international waters, and they have to go to fix it. And lo and behold, what they find is an alien spacecraft that has a wormhole in it because it's got hyperspeed, and it basically opens up a black hole, and they've got to, be able to close it, or it's going to suck the world into it, universal destruction, what have you. The only way it works is Superman flies in there and he's able to complete a circuit that keeps it from imploding and, sucking the universe into this black hole, but it takes him somewhere and he doesn't know where it is. And so he ends up being sucked out into space where he has to effectively hold his breath for ungodly numbers of months, weeks, and years as he is just floating endlessly through space and isolated and dying. He happens to get picked up and found by, some groups, a group of aliens who are like, what is this? They're salvagers. They're gonna look at the wreckage. They are basically going to drop him off on his home planet, and he's like, I have no money to give you, so they just ditch him on a planet or whatever. Just kind of a weird comedic moment. But he's millions and trillions of light years away from home. He doesn't know where he's at. He gets stuck on a planet that's not his. Ends up on one planet. He's talking to them, and there's a very, very clear power dynamic. That are injustice that's there, but he's not real sure how it works. Those people seem to be in a real big hurry to get him off the planet, and they give him this suit that helps absorb sunlight, and they give him basically a rebreathing machine and a way to get through space, and send him off rocketeering through space again. And he's like, well, they were kind of in a hurry to get me off, and back of his head's itching like something felt wrong with that. Ends up going out in space and having a moment where he has to make a choice, either continue on the trajectory or go back and help. And he kind of chooses to go back and help, and ends up in the long run kind of adopting this second planet, or at least finding the people who need to be there. While he's out traveling around, he ends up linking up and finding Lobo's space dolphins. So you get kind of this, global universal continuity there. They loop him back in. He ends up trying to go with them to a planet. At this planet, there's little sentient plankton beings that they're like, you just brought monsters to our planet that are going to eat us. And he's like, I did not mean to do this. I was just space dolphins. And so he has to, like, there's all of these neat things. He meets a Green Lantern person who he sees a lot of himself in. She's also isolated and broken and alone and home, like untethered from home. And she's not sure what's going on, but her name is Hope. She's a little extremely fractured. And so throughout the 12 issues, they show you kind of what Superman was doing out there. But again, as you're looking at these incredible, and I included some variant covers if you're watching this on YouTube, but if you're listening to this, you can go look them up too. Lee Weeks did a phenomenal job with the variant covers on this. You really see the isolation. You see Superman in some very vulnerable moments, because he comes back right after all of this. He comes back and he is not the same person that he was. And his wife is like, you left 4 hours ago. What has happened? He has been in space where he has had to hold his breath for months at a time. She catches him where he is not breathing, right? He's holding his breath instinctively. He's dealing with the PTSD. He's dealing with the isolation and the trauma. He's dealing with the fact that things happen that he could not help people that he felt he deserved to help, or that needed his help. He's having to deal with all of this and the pressure that put on him, and knowing that at one point Bruce shows up, and again in Lois's timeline, things are just happened, but Bruce knows that something has gone on, and he goes in there and he's like, Lois, I'm sorry. And he's like, Clark steps in and says, Lois, you're not mad at him, you're mad at me. You're not, don't do this to him. You need answers. I'm going to tell you these stories. But it just shows, just again, the odd dynamics and the emotions and the connections that these characters have. And just, these are people. Like, yes, these are super powered beings, but the pressure in the world that they live in and the amount has a very, very, very large impact on their mental health. And they are not above that. And I think that was wonderful for them to show. Yes, this is a man who is faster than a speeding bullet. He can leap tall buildings. He's stronger than a locomotive, right? but can he stand the pressure of PTSD? Can he stand depression, isolation? Can he stand loneliness? Can he beat that? And ultimately, the answer is yes, with the help of the people around him. And I think that was a very, very, very important thing for these people to show us in the midst of the really cool superheroic things that he does while he's out in space, and the cool costumes and the characters that he meets, and just the way that he goes about it. This book also shows you the how Lois is just a force not to be reckoned with, and for Clark, she's willing to quite literally, well, not literally, she's willing to make a deal with the person that she thinks is probably the closest with the devil. She does some really scary things that will test herself. She gets incredibly ill, and again, you have to deal with the fact that Clark may be losing somebody. Lex Luthor plays a very important role in this. Obviously you can put two and two together. Lois is making a deal with Lex at some point. She taps into Diana to come try to talk to him. She's trying to lean into his friends. This is a wonderful adventure, but it's also a fantastic treatise on mental health and on what these what people in important situations and people who seem to have everything from the outside looking in might be facing. It floored me. It's absolutely beautiful. I love Carlos, Pagulian. Apologies if I'm not pronouncing that right. Been a huge fan of his since Planet Hulk. Love the work that he does. It is phenomenal. So go read this. It is well worth your while. It's 12 issues. It can be a heavy read. Priest is wordy. This uses Priest's kind of formula. If you read his books all kind of look and flow the same. He's doing some of that there as well, but he gets these characters. And as far as continuity goes, man, I think you can take this story and put it into about any continuity you want to. It's a universal Superman story, which I think some of these evergreen titles that we've talked about, that's kind of what they are, right?
Yeah.
So
I think all three books kind of function. Yeah, I read it. I was a little bit disrupted because it was one of those situations where I got issues 10 and 11 before 9 and held off, and it really disrupted the momentum of that. But and Priest is really good at this particular type of question marks hanging over storytelling, and it's really well done. And there's just some wonderful moments. I mean, you haven't even mentioned like Batman in this, and that's a really cool take on Batman. And it's interesting because I'm saying this like, here it goes, it disrupts their friendship, and in this one, it shows the levels that how deep they are in certain continuities.
Yeah,
and I think this is very important. Something you said, like all three of these, you can just eject the issue of canon, and you just make them fit somehow.
Yep.
They're all good reads. Yep.
So I would highly recommend going and reading that. You can find it just about anywhere. DC app has it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So go check. I mean, they have all three of these, and right now there's some really good specials on the DC app that are showcasing really great Superman stories for people, naturally because of the movies.
Yeah.
Also, I was going to mention something a while ago. Our friend Hassan pointed out one of the things that he thought was funny is that there wasn't a bunch of ads in the comics for this Superman movie. They didn't need it. There were some, but he was like, we've seen movies before where they just littered everything to remind you that it exists. They didn't have to do that.
No, it was just back covers.
Yeah.
This time. Yeah.
So.
Yep. All right. Well, we're going to start wrapping the show up. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we have two destinations. The first of which is where we show off our Geek Gets. So I know with me, they're all related to the crest. But Steve, why don't we start with you? And if you have something to show off, please do so.
I do. So, I get a lot of Kickstarters, and I have been following Jean-Frédéric Conet's Santa Francis since the beginning. And Santa Francis Volume 4 just arrived. They're all in the same format, so they all sort of fit together perfectly. This is the latest one that's available. I wish I could show you the interiors. They are beautiful, but not all of them are good for
not getting
for Facebook or YouTube would get us kicked off. But it did come with, of course, a lot of great swag as well. So you get a French calendar, and you also get some really fun stickers that are cool. And I can show you these because they're not too risque, but some non-naked bookmarks, and then some very, very naked postcards that I cannot show you. And I'm like, why would anybody be able to send these in by post? Because, dear Lord. But anyway, it is a great story. If you've been following it, it's wonderful. The characters are really great. There is a lot of sex and nudity, but it's a really good sort of soap opera comic book about the bear community and adjacents. So check it out if you can. I know you can purchase them. Usually they are available in Europe. You should be able to purchase them elsewhere soon. But Santa Francis.
All right, very cool. Over to Caleb. Caleb, what about you? Do you have a Geek Get or two?
I have two that I'm going to showcase. Like you, Bill, they are both in the realm of Superman, right? And so specifically, one of them I'm really excited about. One of them was an impulse buy today, but one of them, the one that I'm really excited about, involves comics, but it's not a comic book. I was walking through Lowe's the other day because I needed to go pick something up to take care of my house. I'm getting ready to check out. I look over and I see a magazine and it's got Superman on the cover. I'm like, yeah, a movie's coming out. Good. So I take a closer look at it. It's comics. And I'm like, I'm in Lowe's and there's comics on the shelf. I've been saying for years that, the biggest hurdle and the biggest problem with comics these days is that comics are not really, and historically, as accessible. They're not in grocery stores, right? They're not in places where they can be impulse bought, which is what they need to be. And I'm looking over there and there's Superman comics. And so I grabbed it. It's this, right? And I think if you go into a lot of places, you'll see this. This has 3 different first issues of it. It's saying, hey, that movie's coming out. We want to do the same thing kind of that the Bears just did in this episode and tell you about some comics you should go read. And this has got 3 different comics than the ones we spoke about. That I think are worth showcasing and are probably at least 2 of them I think are kind of in the on every list of the quote unquote best Superman stories of all time. Of course, you're going to get Morrison and Quietly All-Star Superman, right? So you get the first chapter of that. You get the first chapter of what is for me my favorite Superman story, and I mentioned earlier the story that made me understand Superman for the first time is Loeb and Sale's Superman for All Seasons. I love that. I'm actually going to end up getting the Absolute that came out. It is my favorite Superman of all time. Love this story. You get a showcase into that, and then you also get a glimpse into Azzarello and Bermejo's Lex Luthor story, which isn't my jam. I've read it. I didn't care for it.
Yeah, it's almost like a warm up for Joker.
Yeah, well, and I was going to say, if you want to see these 2 writing a villain story that is the best it can be, go read Azzarello and Bermejo's Joker, because it is phenomenal. But again, I like that it's showcased in here, and they're going to give you a little glimpse into who Lex Luthor is. So really cool. Pick it up. Even if you've read those stories, it's kind of just neat to have. Pass it off to a kid, man. Pass it off to somebody in your office that you work with. Pass it off to literally anybody who might get a kick out of it, and they can go buy it. My second Geek Get in Target today, shopping for my brand new nephew. My brother and his wife brought a new little boy into the world last week, so I'm an uncle again and super excited. But I was buying them things, and I saw Superman, and so I grabbed him. It's the new figure. They're doing the Build-A-Figure thing, and you get number 4, Gary, who is voiced by Alan Tudyk in the show. So you can put together all of these. There's a Mr. Terrific, Green Lantern, Metamorpho, Hawk Girl, the Engineer. All those characters will build you the robot. I'm not like Bill. I don't buy a whole lot of toys and stuff. That's just not who I am as a collector and stuff like that. Although I love them, but I saw this and was like, you know what? I want Superman on my shelf. I'm 1,000% taking this out of the package. I'll have him up on my shelf doing stuff where I can play with him. You'll see me flying him around and stuff like that. So that's my other Geek Get.
All right, cool.
Yep.
All right, so on the same note, that's from Spin Master, which has the master license for DC right now until Mattel takes it back over next year. So I got 2 Spin Master toys. The first is a Walmart exclusive. This is the Fortress of Solitude battle set. And as you can see here, there's a like a Yeti type of thing here. I don't think it's necessarily named, is it? No, but this supposedly was based on a scene that was cut out of the film. But you have the Fortress of Solitude backdrop. You have a Superman figure. You have Crypto. You have Ultraman, and you have Gary um, in 2-inch format. So that's kind of cool. But you also don't have to spend a lot of money on Superman merch right now. For just a few bucks, I got the Baby Joey Chomper, which I already showed during this. Yeah, Baby Joey, what do you have to tell me? Yeah, what do you have to tell me? See, he's a chomp, so his mouth moves. And he's like, what do you have to tell me? Why does Caleb hate me? I don't know why Caleb hates you. I really don't know. I would just say, you can't make somebody like you. And what I would say, just steer clear of him. You got me and Steve. We'll be okay with you. Just steer clear of him, okay? Okay, baby Joey? Okay. All right, so yeah, you got a little baby Joey Chomper. And to say you really don't have to spend a lot of money, I actually did get the same book that Caleb got, and Steve was there when I got it because it was over at a
Harris
supermarket.
Teeter. I was there.
Yes, you were. Yeah. But I got I got a Superman product at a supermarket. And I imagine this is the same case. They have a jumbo coloring and activity book based on the movie. And these are really cheap. You can find those between $1 and $2 at most things. And it's not an adult coloring book, but I think some of the art is a bit sophisticated. Since it is geared towards children, it's very crypto heavy. And you can also have cut out a nice little crypto poster on the back. And it's just nice to see, like Caleb said, you can't go into most stores and buy a comic book. This is all over the place. And it's a nice little thing to have. So that's my Geek Get. All right. So we're up to the final segment of our show. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears up, we do so with the segment we call the Woofs of the Week. In the bear community, if you find a fella attractive, you woof at him. And we do something very similar where we woof at something, which may be comic book or comic book related, might be a film or a TV program or a childhood initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start as I always do with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
Well, my woof of the week is this movie that just came out called Superman, directed by James Gunn. Oh, I'm kidding. Because I watch a lot of TV, even though I haven't really been able to catch up on a lot of shows, one that just started back is Foundation. It is based on Isaac Asimov's Foundation series, as well as the iRobot series. He has a long bunch of books that are all in the same universe, as is this show. This is the third season, and it picks up right where the second season left off. But we do get in the first episode, a nice, interesting flashback to for the character Demerzel, back to her original history as a robot in the early years. So basically, goes right back to the iRobot and the original, that kind of era of Asimov writing to kind of explain where robots have gone in this far, far, far future version. But it's a beautiful series. Just the effects are amazing, cinematic in quality. The writing is great. The acting is wonderful. Just if you're a huge Asimov fan, hopefully you've been watching this and really enjoying it. But it is back on Apple TV Plus. New episodes every Friday.
Cool. All right, over to Caleb. Caleb, what is your woof of the week?
So my woof of the week goes out to yet again another Superman-related thing. I went all in. So Superman, if nothing else, as a character or a film, should teach you a lot about the indomitable human spirit, right? That's a big part of the DNA, and I think that one figure in Superman history who really embodies that really well is what was Christopher Reeve. And so there was a documentary that came out last year, and actually, I believe I did not go back and check it. Bill, I think you actually spoke about this a little bit, but it's Super/Man, the Christopher Reeve story. It's streaming on Hulu right now. Yeah. It is a very, very, very good documentary that starts. It takes you through who Christopher Reeve was as an actor. Young person going to Juilliard, rooming with a quirky young guy named Robin Williams. Really into theater and stage play, is working in that world, gets a call, goes to London and tries for Superman, becomes an overnight sensation, deals with fame, meets a girl, falls in love, has a couple of kids. 4 movies later, and his career is not going the way he really wants it to. He can't really get out of the Superman role, and the rest of the movies that he's trying to take and get more serious roles just aren't catching on and being the successes that he wants to. And then the horse accident happens and upends everything. And it's a struggle for a man who is learning to walk again, a man who really did embody this outgoing, adventurous, my body cannot fail me spirit, of things. And that's who he was as a person. The documentary interviews 3 of his children in very real, very vulnerable ways, where they're talking about the man who was their father. They speak to longtime best friends who ran his foundation. There are several actors. Glenn Close is in there. Glenn Close makes the argument that she honestly believes that if Christopher Reeve had been alive today, then Robin Williams would have been alive today. That they were very close and it impacted him a lot. So you get into the psychology of these people. It's a very hard interview to watch. It's a very hard movie to watch because you ultimately know the end of it and that what they did, but it also showcases his legacy. My husband and I went and watched Superman, and then I came home and turned on the TV and happened to see on Hulu this documentary. I'm like, hey, let's make it a Superman night. We both sat and watched this. There were both moments where I think we were both just crying, trying to watch this very, very good documentary. And if you're looking at a film that embodies yet again the spirit of the human condition, compassion, and the spirit of I'm going to not only am I not going to give up, I'm going to pull as many people up with me. That is what this tries to showcase, right? So again, that is what the documentary itself is. That is the message that it's sending. That's the man who Christopher Reeve was. So go check it out. It's streaming on Hulu. It's a good watch.
All right, cool. All right, for my Woof of the Week, it's anniversary based, and let me see if I have props here. I do. And 40 years ago today was the date that the Transatlantic Live Aid concerts took place. 40 years ago today, July 13th, 1985. And teenager me was in the audience at Philadelphia. And just because there's weird people out there, and this is my ticket stub from Live Aid. This is a 40-year-old ticket stub. And Steve, I did put some graphics up for you. This was one of the posters. Almost every poster has incorrect listings for the lineups because it shifted so much. So and there were some acts like Rod Stewart and Tears for Fears, who in Philadelphia canceled like the day of the show. So the lineup was fluid. There's a wonderful autobiography by Bob Geldof, who put together Band Aid and Live Aid, called "Is That It?", which details some of the chaos involved in putting the shows together, and it's worth reading the book just for those 2 chapters, without a doubt. People are weird. So anyway, again with Live Aid, this was a benefit to help eradicate hunger in Ethiopia. In November of 1984, there was a BBC report that detailed how bad the situation was. Really spoke to Bob Geldof, who was lead singer of the Boomtown Rats. He got together with one of his good friends, Midjor of Ultravox, and they put the Do They Know It's Christmas charity record together. That eventually led to We Are the World, and eventually led to Live Aid and a whole bunch of other things. The Live Aid performance in the UK is naturally best known for the performance by Queen. I think I provided a little graph there. A graphic there. Yeah, there you go. There's Freddie and Mercury there. And if you can go to the next Freddie and Mercury, it's Brian May. And this was the actual stage setup in Philadelphia. And if you're ever watching the footage of the show, there's a scene where a guy jumps on a scaffold during the Beach Boys set, and the cameras turn on him, and I'm like below that guy. So I've never been able to see myself, but maybe there was a shot there. So this was the DVD that came out in 2004. It's the only time that this was ever released officially, but there's legal streaming on the Live Aid channel. They're actually showing most of the footage that's in here and a couple of other bits. I think over the next 2 days it's going to be available, but there's other content. Basically, most of the show is available on YouTube, whether it's an official resource or not. So, and there's some really excellent documentaries. Most of them are British based because it was a much bigger cultural touchstone in England than it was here. But while we've been recording, it was the first night of a new CNN 4-part documentary about Live Aid, which, Steve, you're going to have to get for the Plex for us. And so that went on tonight. So not all the documentaries are UK based. So if you want to sample the beautiful snapshot in time of where the music scene was 40 years ago, Live Aid.
Awesome.
That's it. Yeah.
They've been doing if you listen to First Wave on satellite radio, they've been doing recaps of that stuff all day. And it's been really fun to listen to as we were traveling today. I was listening to that, and just it had to be an amazing experience. And the fact that we're talking about this now after the last performance of Ozzy Osbourne and Black Sabbath that just happened, I was thinking about that all day, which I know a lot of that money went to charity as well. But that's the biggest kind of celebration of rock doing something that since Live Aid that I can really remember.
Well, there were some others. There was Net Aid, there was Live 8, Farm Aid, which was an ongoing concern. There's been a number, but it seems that the Back to the Beginning show was it was a big outpouring of love. It felt in a community that's not necessarily known for being identified with that, and I'm not saying that's the case. I'm just saying it's not known.
It's not the image.
And that's really, I mean, they look out for each other. It's like punk rock, they're always looking out for each other. You never get that with country, So anyway, and it's worth mentioning that in terms of Black Sabbath and Ozzy, they performed at Live Aid, and they had not been together since 1978.
Yeah, they got back together.
It was like a 7-year gap there. Yeah. And actually, in my program, it's only Ozzy Osbourne that's credited. It was a surprise. I think there was chatter about it 2 days before, and that's one thing that's really frustrating about the time that I grew up in, because if this was now, I have about 470 selfies of that day, I got nothing. I got a ticket stub to prove I was there.
Yeah.
and maybe my head in the shot of the Beach Boys performing. Yeah. So.
Awesome.
All right, well, that's our episode. If you have enjoyed it, please go to some of our resources online. We have a Facebook page, which is Comic Book Bears Podcast. Most of our other social media, though, is Comic Book Bears. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. If you want to listen to this and previous episodes, you can download us on Apple Music and Apple Podcasts, and many of the other podcasting platforms. If you joined us tonight through Facebook Live, thank you. If you're watching us later on YouTube, thank you. Please like and subscribe. And we'll be back probably in maybe 10 days, a week from Thursday. We'll try to get back on our schedule. We don't normally do Sunday nights, but as I said at the beginning of the show, we wanted to have the opportunities that everybody saw Superman. So that the next show that we have. All right. Well, thank you for joining us. Again, we're the Comic Book Bears podcast. It's still late. Even though it's Sunday, it's still late. It's earlier than we're usually doing, but it's still late. So I'm tired. But I gotta say, we had a comment a couple of weeks ago about how tired Caleb and I looked, and we look damn good tonight.
We do.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
I think we are very handsome.
I need a haircut, but
yeah, I think we're very good-looking fellows here tonight. So. And looks very well rested.
Also, when I look tired and haggard, it has nothing to do with what time of the day it is. That's just who I am as a person that week. You're just going to have to live with it. So some weeks you're just going to have puffy eyes.
All right. Well, until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Steve Morey.
I'm Caleb Alexander McKenzie.
If you're listening to the audio version, you're going to hear Woof and Explosion. And again, we'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.